Ladies, lean in. I'm about to give you a secret, not one of those beauty tips or social media tricks. No, I'm talking about something real, something raw, and something that'll get your man looking at you like you're the only woman on the planet. You ever wanted to know how deep his love runs? You ever wondered if what he's feeling is real or just routine? You don't need to play games. You don't need to do cartwheels or send 20 texts in a row. All you need are 3 words. Not, I love you. Nah, he's heard it. You say it, he says it back. It's sweet, but it doesn't pull truth out of his soul. You ready for this? Here they are. How are you? I know. You're thinking. That's it. Yes, but I want you to hear me out. When a woman looks a man in his eyes and asks, not out of habit, not out of obligation, but with sincerity, how are you? It hits different because men, we don't get asked that much. We get told what to do. We get asked what we've done, but rarely do we get asked how we are, what we're carrying, what's bothering us, what we're scared of. That question, it melts walls. It opens hearts. It's not soft, it's powerful. You ask a man that and he'll start talking. He might fumble at first, but give it time. You'll see his eyes soften, his voice crack just a little. That's not weakness. That's love being born in truth. Ladies, you want your man to tell you how much he loves you. Say these 3 words with a hand on his chest and a heart that listens. How are you? Because when a man feels seen, he opens up. And when he opens up, he gives you everything. Not just the flowers, not just the text. He gives you the kind of love that shows up in the middle of the night when you're crying and you don't even know why. That kind of love starts with those 3 words. So try it. Tonight, look him in the eyes, ask him sincerely, and see what happens. You'll find out more than just how he is. You'll find out how much he loves you. So often in relationships, we place a heavy emphasis on grand gestures, gifts, romantic trips, surprise dinners, and constant affirmations of I love you. While all of that is beautiful, there's a deeper layer many women never tap into. Beneath the surface of what a man gives you lies something far more precious. His emotions. And that, my friend, is guarded behind an invisible wall. But here's the truth most people miss. It doesn't take diamonds or poetry to unlock that part of him. Sometimes all it takes are 3 simple words. But let's be clear, not just any 3 words. We're not talking about the cliches you see in romance movies or on social media. The magic comes when you choose words that reach into his reality, his day, his soul, his silence. That's where the transformation begins. These words may sound ordinary on the surface, but when spoken with genuine intention, they hold the power to soften the hardest armor. Why? Because they speak to something men are almost never asked, how are you? These 3 words might sound basic, but they're loaded with emotional weight when used sincerely. Here's the thing. Most men are not used to being checked on. They're used to performing, providing, fixing, solving. Their worth is measured in actions, outcomes, and strength. So when someone stops and says, hey, how are you? Not out of politeness, not as a passing phrase, but with presence and patience, it disorients him in the best way. For a moment, he doesn't have to be the man with the answers. He gets to be the man with feelings. And that shift, that's where love stops being a performance and starts becoming personal. And what's wild is, this doesn't just touch his heart, it shocks his system. Think about it. How many times has he been asked a question without it being tied to an agenda, without someone rushing through it? Rarely. That's why it hits differently when you're the one who asks and you truly want to know. It's not a line, it's a lifeline. Suddenly, he feels like he doesn't have to hide, like he's allowed to be human. And that level of emotional safety, it makes a man fall harder than any romantic phrase ever could. Men, contrary to stereotypes, feel deeply, but they've been taught to tuck those feelings away. Society says vulnerability equals weakness. But when the right person, someone he trusts, asks him a heartfelt, how are you? It gives him permission to access what he's buried. And once he starts to speak from that place, you're no longer talking to the role he plays in the world, you're speaking to who he really is. And that kind of connection doesn't just create love, it cements it. So don't underestimate the power of 3 words. Not when they carry sincerity, not when they pierce silence, not when they're delivered with your full attention. When you ask a man something simple like, how are you? And mean it, you're not just starting a conversation, you're starting a transformation. Because it's not the words themselves that unlock his heart. It's the care, the curiosity, and the safety behind them. And that's when love goes from something he shows to something he shares. From the time they are little boys, most men are taught, explicitly or subtly, that emotions are not their territory. If they fall, they're told to shake it off. If they cry, they're told to man up. If they hesitate, they're seen as weak. So they begin to build walls early on. Not because they don't feel, because they've been conditioned to believe their feelings don't matter, or worse, that expressing them is a threat to their masculinity. By the time they reach adulthood, asking a man how he truly feels like navigating a foreign language he was never allowed to learn. This emotional neglect doesn't mean men are cold or indifferent. On the contrary, many men are deeply emotional creatures, carrying pain, hope, fear, and dreams. But unlike women, who often grow up in environments where sharing emotions is encouraged and even expected, men learn to bury theirs. And what's dangerous about that is not just the silence, but the pressure. A man who is never asked about his emotional world eventually convinces himself he doesn't have one worth exploring. He becomes quiet not because he has nothing to say, but because no one ever asked with the intention to truly listen. When a woman takes the time to ask how he truly feels, it disrupts that pattern. It doesn't just surprise him, it gently confronts the silence he's grown comfortable with. He might shrug it off at first. He might say, "I'm fine." But inside, something shifts, something softens, because even if he doesn't open up right away, he notices that you cared enough to ask. You weren't trying to fix him, interrogate him, or get something from him. You were simply trying to understand him, and that gesture alone starts to chip away at years of emotional isolation. This is why sincerity matters so much. If you ask, "How are you?" the same way a coworker does at the coffee machine, it won't mean much. But if you ask it while looking at him like his answer matters, when your tone says, "You don't have to pretend here," it awakens something inside him. Because deep down, no matter how stoic or strong he appears, every man wants someone who can hold space for his truth. He may not say it, he may not even know how to express it. But when it's offered, it speaks to his heart more than any romantic cliche ever could. What many people don't realize is that men do want to be emotionally seen. They just want to be seen without judgment. Most have had at least one moment in life where they opened up and were met with rejection, mockery, or dismissal. So now they guard their feelings like a vault. That's why asking him how he truly feels has to come from a place of emotional safety. It has to be genuine. It has to be patient. And it has to be free of expectations, because he won't open up if he feels like it's just another performance he has to pass. So when you say those words, "How are you?" you're offering more than a question. You're offering an invitation. An invitation to break out of the emotional prison he didn't ask to be locked in. An invitation to express without consequence. An invitation to finally be something more than strong, to be whole. In that moment, that's when a man begins to feel not just loved, but understood. And that understanding lays the foundation for a connection deeper than physical attraction or surface level compatibility. It becomes a soul bond. And that starts with giving him the space to feel. When you ask a man, "How are you?" with genuine intent, you're not tossing out a pleasantry, you're cracking open a doorway to territory he rarely explores. It's like sliding an all-access pass across the table, embossed with the words, "I'm here for whatever's inside you." The gravity of that offer hits him instantly, even if he pretends it doesn't. In that split second, he realizes he can either keep walking around with emotional armor or step into a space where that armor isn't required. Intent shows up in the little details. The pause before the question, the way your eyes stay fixed on is instead of drifting to your phone, the subtle lean. And that says, "I'm not going anywhere until you answer." Most men are human polygraphs. They know when a question is perfunctory and when it's invested. When your energy is aligned with authentic curiosity, the words land like a warm hand on his shoulder, calm, steady, unmistakably present. Picture him coming home after a day of silent battles, deadlines, traffic, expectations. He kicks off his shoes, still carrying invisible weights. You look up from whatever you're doing, meet his gaze, and softly ask, "How are you?" Nothing fancy. No flowery jargon, just pure deliberate attention. Watch his shoulders drop a quarter inch. That micro movement is years of conditioning loosening its grip. The question signals psychological safety. It tells him he won't be graded on the neatness of his answer, only on its honesty. In that safety, vulnerability stops feeling like exposure and starts feeling like relief. He realizes he can talk about the promotion he didn't get, the parent he's worried about, the insecurity he hides behind jokes, and you won't flinch. Instead, you'll nod, maybe slide closer, making room for his truth like you'd make room on a crowded couch. Think of it as unlocking a vault. Every sincere "How are you?" is a combination digit. With each turn, he feels another latch release. Eventually, the door swings open, revealing not just frustration or fatigue, but the raw jewels of his inner world, hopes he's too shy to name, fears he's sure no one would understand. Once he's shared those, the emotional equity between you skyrockets. You're no longer just partners, you're co-owners of each other's hidden treasures. Over time, that single Intentional question becomes a rhythm, like a drumbeat the relationship marches to. He starts volunteering how he feels before you even ask. Way, because the invitation is now written on the atmosphere between you. And the confidence he gains from being heard doesn't just stay at home. It flows into how he parents, how he works, how he shows up for friends. All because someone cared enough to pause, look him in the eye, and ask the simplest, most disarming question in the world. At the core of every human relationship, romantic, platonic, or familial, is the deep desire to be seen and heard. And for men, this need is often buried beneath layers of pride, conditioning, and silence. You see, love doesn't begin in the grand gestures or poetic words. It begins in the moment someone pauses long enough to notice what others overlook. When a man feels truly seen, not for what he does, but for who he is, he begins to trust. And trust, that's the breeding ground for emotional connection. So many men walk through life playing roles: the provider, the protector, the fixer, the one who has it all under control. Society has taught him to measure his worth in output, not openness. But underneath that exterior is a human being craving emotional acknowledgement. When someone takes the time to ask a real question, and even more importantly, listens without interrupting, judging, or redirecting, it disrupts the narrative he's been fed. Suddenly, he's not just filling a role. He's being recognized as a complex, feeling deserving individual. Think of how rare that is for many men. People talk to him all day. Colleagues, clients, friends, but rarely do they listen. People assume he's okay, assume he's strong, assume he doesn't need the same emotional nourishment everyone else does. So when you become the person who notices what others ignore, the tension in his voice, the heaviness in his silence, the worry behind his smile, it becomes unforgettable. You become the one who doesn't just see him, you understand him. And from there, connection deepens naturally. Listening is more than just letting someone talk. It's a form of validation. It's telling him without saying it, you matter, your feelings matter. Your experiences aren't invisible to me. This isn't about agreeing with everything he says or fixing his problems. It's about giving him room to express without fear of ridicule or rejection. In that emotional space, something beautiful begins to unfold. He lets his guard down, not because you demanded it, but because your presence told him it was safe. Men often struggle to articulate their emotions, not because they don't feel them, but because they're not used to having room to explore them. They've spent years translating everything into action, into doing. But love, a real soul level love, requires more than action. It requires access. When he feels heard, really heard, he stops performing and starts connecting. He begins to reveal layers of himself that he may have kept hidden for years, not even out of secrecy, but out of the belief that no one ever wanted to see them. So when a man feels seen and heard, he doesn't just open up, he anchors himself to the relationship. He feels a sense of belonging that runs deeper than attraction or chemistry. He starts to show up with more honesty, more vulnerability, and more emotional presence. That's when love transforms from a surface level bond to a sacred space. And all of it begins with the simple act of paying attention, of noticing the quiet moments, the unsaid thoughts, and the emotions he never thought he was allowed to show. When a man is asked, "How are you?" with true sincerity, it does more than start a conversation. It begins the gentle unraveling of years of emotional defense. Sincerity is the secret ingredient that separates empty questions from transformative ones. A man who has spent years keeping things in, holding his emotions behind a wall of strength, doesn't tear that wall down because someone knocked once. He lowers it slowly, cautiously. But the key to unlocking that vulnerability is not force, it's genuine care. A sincere question has the power to make him feel safe in a way that most environments never do. You see, most men have been conditioned to treat their emotions like ticking time bombs, dangerous, volatile, and best kept locked away. So when someone asks, "How are you?" in a tone that's rushed, distracted, or disinterested, it confirms what he already suspects, that no one really wants the truth. But when that question is asked with softness, patience, and presence, it does something different. It tells him, "I won't run if you open up. I won't judge what you say. I'm here." That kind of safety doesn't just invite honesty, it invites healing. Sincerity is felt long before it's heard. It's in your eyes, your posture, the way you lean and instead of pulling away. When a man senses that you're truly invested in his answer, not just making small talk or checking a box, it slowly begins to chip away at the armor he wears. He might hesitate. He might dodge, but deep down he knows something's different. This is an obligation, it's care. And when he recognizes that even if he doesn't open up right away, he starts to trust that eventually he can. away. And these emotional barriers don't exist because he doesn't want connection. They exist because experience has taught him that vulnerability often leads to pain. Way, maybe someone laughed when he opened up. Maybe his vulnerability was once used against it. Maybe he was told, directly or indirectly, that real men don't talk about their feelings. So now when he's asked how he is, it's almost instinct to say, I'm good, and move on. But if you're patient and you ask again later with the same care and softness, it sends a message louder than words. You are allowed to be human with me. What makes sincerity so powerful is that it requires no special setting. You don't need candlelight or a deep talk at 2 a.m. It can happen while you're washing dishes together. Driving in silence or sitting side by side in sweatpants is not the timing, it's the tone. It's the willingness to go beyond surface level. That's what breaks emotional barriers, not intensity, but consistency. Not interrogation, but quiet presence. Not demanding answers, but holding space for whatever he's ready to share. And here's the miracle of once a man feels that sincerity regularly, the barriers that once seemed unbreakable begin to fade. Not overnight, not all at once, but gradually he begins to share without being asked. He starts bringing his emotions to the table without prompting because he knows they'll be met with compassion, not criticism. And that's where the relationship grows roots, not in grand romantic gestures, but in those sincere everyday moments where love shows up as understanding. Because in the end, love isn't built by breaking walls, it's built by proving moment after moment that you're someone he doesn't have to hide from. When a man feels emotionally safe, something profound shifts inside him. It's like unlocking a part of himself he didn't even realize was closed off. He starts to breathe differently, speak differently, and most importantly, love differently. The truth is, most men are taught to guard their emotions like a fortress. But once he realizes he's not going to be judged, laughed at, or made to feel small for how he feels, he begins to show love in its purest, most unfiltered form, not just in words, but in action, attention, and presence. Safety isn't just about comfort, it's about freedom. Emotional safety tells a man, you don't have to earn your right to feel. And that permission is everything. It gives him space to express his fears without feeling weak, to share his past without shame, to talk about his dreams without downplaying them. And when he feels safe enough to go there, love flows effortlessly. Suddenly, you'll see him open doors, not just literal ones, but emotional ones. He'll share stories he's never told anyone, give affection without hesitation, and make space for your emotions too. You'll start to see the difference between a man who's performing love and a man who's living it. A man who performs says, I love you, when it's expected. A man who feels safe will say it when you least expect it, when he looks at you laughing, or when you're curled up on the couch in silence. He won't just tell you, he'll show you, he'll remember the little things, protect your peace, and include you in his world, not because he has to, but because he wants to. Love becomes less about routine and more about intention. The beauty of emotional safety is that it doesn't just benefit him, it transforms the entire relationship. When he feels secure enough to open up, it creates space for mutual vulnerability. You both begin to operate from a place of truth instead of performance. You stop reading between the lines or guessing what the other person feels. Instead, there's clarity, honesty, and depth. You no longer feel like you're tiptoeing around emotional landmines. You're walking together, side by side, building something real. This kind of love becomes visible in the smallest moments. In the way he reaches for your hand when words fail. In the way he stays when you're upset. Not because he knows what to say, but because he refuses to leave you alone in your emotions. In the way he admits when he's wrong and apologizes without ego. These aren't grand gestures meant to impress. They're natural outpourings of a heart that feels safe to be soft. And softness in a man, contrary to what the world says, is not weakness. It's one of the strongest, rarest forms of love. Emotional safety turns a guarded man into a giving one. And once that transformation happens, you'll witness something extraordinary, a man who doesn't just say he loves you, but proves it in every way that counts. He'll express it through consistency. Through his listening, through the way he supports your dreams as if they're his own. And it all starts with this knowing that he doesn't have to filter himself to be loved. He can be emotional, flawed human and still be enough. That's the kind of love that doesn't fade, it grows, it strengthens, it stays. So ladies, let me leave you with this. Love isn't always about the big things. It's not always in the roses, the candlelit dinners, or the anniversary gifts. Sometimes, the most powerful love stories are written in the quiet moments, in the pauses, in the stillness, in the simple words that tell him, I see you. And sometimes the doorway to his heart isn't locked at all. It's just never been knocked on the right way. Those 3 words, how are you? They may sound ordinary, way, but when you say them with your heart, when you say them with patience, when you say them like you mean it, they become extraordinary. Way, because you're not just asking for an update. You're reaching out for his truth. Way, and once he sees that you're a safe place for it, once he realizes he can trust you with the version of him the world doesn't see, that's when the real love begins. Way, that's when he'll tell you, show you, and prove to you how deeply he loves you, not just with what he says, but with who he becomes when he's with you. So tonight, tomorrow, or whenever your heart leads, ask him just 3 words. Say them with love. Say them like a whisper to his soul, and then watch what happens.